Shiny objects.
Shiny objects. Shiny objects.
SOS.
No, well, it's very difficult to stay focused on the project when there's so much new stuff. Easily just enter different
You mean serious? Because I mean, I'm in Dallas. I was here.
What you say, because if there were tape, the tape would be running.
Everyone's still eating? Awake? That's okay, you can sleep too. It's alright. All gonna be posted and all kinds of good things. Well, my name is Brendel, and I'm a reference librarian from Florida State University. And this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart because I myself have been struggling, and I do mean struggling, with various temporary and permanent mobility and other issues that have caused me to have to use assistive and accessible technologies. And how many of you here have either used something yourself or have been assisting students who need help with accessible technologies? Okay, good. You're probably more expert at this than I am. In fact, I know you are, because I find that unless you've talked to someone, unless you have helped someone, unless this has touched your life in some way, you just don't know. And quite honestly, I found a lot of people just don't care until they need to help someone or they have it impact their own lives. So I had a co-presenter. She's usually the one that keeps me on track. But she's not here, she's having surgery, so I'm just going to do whatever I want. And that'll serve her right. What I've found over the years, and I have a number of degrees. If you look up me, find AALL and look at my resume, you'll see that I kind of collect diplomas like postage stamps. I love to learn. I don't get them for any particular reason other than that. But I have kind of accumulated a set of them that really make me feel that this issue is going to become more and more important as the years go on and we become more and more involved in distance education, because there are struggles that people who have temporary and permanent disabilities deal with that unless you've been a student, you can't possibly fathom. Unless you've, like I said, you've needed this technology, you can't imagine it. That's my soundtrack. I love it. Actually, it's my new Dell. So what I decided to do was to kind of introduce you to some of the faces of people who use these technologies. My experiences with them, and I'd love at the end, any of you have had experiences of your own, because as I've talked about this with other librarians, I've gotten amazing things from them that other people and other schools never even thought of. And we can all learn from each other, and I think we'll have to learn from each other, because this is not static, and it's actually something that's very creative. I like to think of it as, we're a pharmaceutical company, and we're trying to solve one thing by we're formulating this drug, all of a sudden it cures cancer. And that's not what we were doing in the first place, but we're using it for other things. And these technologies need to be looked at like this. Now, I call this a hostile environment right here already, because I have nowhere to sit down and be really seen. And I have a permanent mobility, a permanent disability. Sometimes you'll see me without my boots, sometimes you'll see me with it. I have a very strange disability where I have a bent tendon, and sometimes I walk perfectly fine, and sometimes I ain't going nowhere. It just depends. The other thing is, and we'll talk about visible and invisible disabilities, but this hand is completely numb. I just had surgery on it, and the surgical scar is healed, but when I touch it, it feels like it's not there. I was calling it my tentacle hand, because it feels like, so you watch Total Recall, but when that guy unfolds his hand, and it's like all the way out here, and it's tentacles? That's what my hand feels like. I can only kind of feel right here and here. And if you go to shake my hand, it feels like knives. So you wouldn't know that by looking at my hand, but it's painful. And so you can't just assume what people need or what people have. So let's get started. And what I'm going to do is sit, and I apologize for that. I was trying to sit over here, except I can't move my slides, and I don't have a clicker thing, which is partially my fault. So, actually it's all my fault. I should have been here earlier. I was waiting for the bus. Okay, so what is this program all about? Well, you read the blurb. That was what me and my co-presenter were putting together, and this was a lot of really technical stuff. And I intend to make sure that all of these really detailed information sheets are available, and like I said, maybe we can have a conversation about some things that you've been using that would really delve more into the specifics. I'm going to talk about some of these, but we'll talk about them in the context of the people that will come to them. Okay, so what is assistive and accessible technology really all about? It's about people. It's about empathy. Most of all, I think it's about imagination, because that's what I've been, when I hear other librarians and IT people talk about how they've helped people who have issues with legal education and other kinds of education, what I've found is that creativity and thinking outside of the usual box is what is the most important thing to getting things done for people. You can't just be like this. You have to think What are all the possibilities I have available to me, and then choose from among them. So educating yourself so that you're ready. And that's the last one, having a prepared mind to solve an emergent problem. If you sit around waiting for a problem to come to you and you are going to be reactive to it, you'll give them the usual. You have a problem with your hand, or we get you some Dragon software, and that'll be it. And that may or may not be the best answer, or that may or may not be what the full scope of what the person needs. It's about inclusiveness. Everyone should have access to everything that is out there. And by not being aware of what is available, you're marginalizing people. And that's always wrong to me. It's a personal feeling. But that's just us respecting each other as human beings. I don't know about you, but I'm old enough to remember backwards compatibility. Does anybody else remember that? Does anybody else remember when it was really, really important? Because you had one of those modems and it couldn't download pictures, and somebody else just got a 56K modem, and you were so jealous because they could go online and do all this stuff. Or you wanted a bigger hard drive so you could do this stuff, and if somebody else had it, it was really fast, or they had a newer computer they stood online for forever, and it was, a 386 or whatever. But it was always really important at that time to make sure that everything was backwards compatible, because there was an acknowledgement that not everybody could afford, not everybody could use, not everybody was going to be able to be on the same systems. And I think we've really come to a point where we're reaching a digital divide of a different kind, where it's assumed that everybody has smartphones. It's assumed that everyone has a cable connection for their internet, that things are going to be accessed at lightning speed, that everybody has electricity. I live on the Gulf Coast of Florida. I lived through the 4-hurricane season on the Gulf Coast of Florida. We didn't have electricity for a long time. When you don't have electricity, you don't have anything. And so I think that we need to really think about backwards compatibility in a different way at this time. Because, I have 2 IT degrees. I love computers. I love technology. I love everything that's out there. I just got a Droid, and I was never so happy in my whole life. I've been playing with it. But up until 2 weeks ago, I was one of the have-nots on the other side of the digital divide. So that when everybody else was accessing things with QR codes hanging from the library that I work at, I couldn't use it. And a lot of law students can't use it, and a lot of people don't even know what it is. And so I really want us to think about not only this digital divide in terms of money and technology resources, but disability and the ability to use those different types of mobile devices and accessing legal education in a different way. I have some people I want you to meet on the slides, but first remember that disabilities can be visible or invisible. And we talked about my hand and my leg, and sometimes you'll see me and I'm walking fine, and you'll think that person's not disabled, and I have one of those cool blue handicap stickers that gives me rock star parking, and so they don't just give those out to everybody. You have to actually qualify for one. So I promise you, I have a permanent mobility disability, and then my hand's on fire, like Ghost Rider, like his head's on fire all the time. That's how my hand feels right now. And we've been doing exercises to inflame the nerves, because that's supposed to help. And the Vicodin does help actually, but the pain is excruciating, and it's something that you can see. So kind of keep that in mind. One of the most important things is not to assume that you know what a disabled person needs when you go to help them, because personal autonomy and the ability to make choices about what's best for you become really important to you when you have a disability. And that may seem selfish or stupid or I can't even think of the words because it never occurred to me before. But to be honest, I went to Australia for a week and I was on a class trip that we had to do 3 credit hours of graduate school work in 1 week. So you can bet we were all over the place. And I couldn't get any information out of the tour operator. He was this young 24-year-old Australian who was really sweet, very nice, didn't have a clue. Was yelling at me because I wasn't at the place I was supposed to be at 9 o'clock. And I was like, you didn't tell me where I'm supposed to be. And he's like, what does that matter? And I'm like, it matters. And I can't explain to you why it matters. It just does. Personal autonomy becomes something that you're hyper aware of. I'm not a child because I'm disabled. And I need to make choices for myself, especially when you're disabled in a way that you can do some things and not others, and you want to manage it and be as normal as possible. And when you take that away from people, it really bothers them. It changes their whole attitude, and it can affect the whole idea of how they feel about law school, not just about one class or one person. Give options, not orders. And this goes back to the whole just knowing what's out there and giving a wide range of suggestions. We're all human beings. We need to respect each other and remember that people need dignity. And sometimes that's all it takes. Okay, so the first person I'd like to introduce you to is Steve Guy, who's one of our law professors. He unfortunately has ALS, Lou-Gehrig's disease. He has basically, last time he told us he's outlived his medical diagnosis by 1.5 years. So he has some of the really interesting assistive devices and accessible devices. Unfortunately, he has a pad for his feet that he's been using to communicate because he can't use his arms. He has deteriorated health-wise to such an extent that he has an eye recognition program that only Megan, one of his assistants, who's now an attorney, was able to work. And what I'm going to do is post the document that Megan sent me, where she described all of the just really frustrating and difficult ways that she could make it work sometimes, but she's not the one that needed it. And he could never make it work. And that frustration can take over your whole life. He has a Try-For Guy, number 4, and there's an endowed chairman, the guy endowment for excellence, and the students do this for him every year. So what I'd like to do is read you a little bit. He sent an update, and this is what he says. Unbelievably, it's almost time for another triathlon, and he's giving this date of everything. The first thing he says is, I should have died somewhere between February 2008 and July 2009. So I win. Unfortunately, the prize is that I get to stick around even though there's not much I can do for myself anymore. So he, over the past 4 years, has gone from one of the most popular professors at FSU, teaching constitutional law, using accessible and assistive devices to keep him teaching, to basically what is known as locked-in syndrome, where he's unable to move, although his brain remains as active as ever. And so he talks about his legs and how they still work and how he's using that pad to communicate. In fact, he's using it to write this email that I'm reading. He says, I've been trying various apparatuses to give me access to the computer, most of which make me want to shoot myself. So I can understand that. For example, there's eye recognition software, which in theory allows your eyes to guide the cursor around the screen and type things on the Windows on-screen keyboard. So far, Megan is the only person who's been able to make the thing work at all, and she averages about 30 minutes to type a word. So something tells me this is not the solution. There are many variations on this theme, but none of them seem to be hopeful prospects at the moment. He's using his voice recognition software, except that, one, it doesn't work. And I've had lots of interesting experiences with voice recognition software myself. And I can tell you that unless you use it all the time, and I had some really bad lung infections recently where I couldn't speak. So if you can't speak, you can't use voice recognition software. There's a lot to it and we'll talk more about it later because one of the law students that I'll profile later heavily uses voice recognition software. You use it a lot, it works really good. You use it a little, or you have any kind of issues with speaking, and you're in some serious trouble. So that's Steve. And he's an extreme case, but he's writing, he's reading, he's using all these technologies. He's an example of don't give up until the very end. And that's just is inspirational to me because it's so frustrating to use technology after technology and find it doesn't work. This doesn't work, that doesn't work. And so he's having to find this out for himself. And I think that it's incumbent upon us as IT people, as librarians, and as people that work in law schools to have this information for ourselves, even if all we do is kind of try it out and see. FSU at the main campus has a fantastic accessibility program set up that I've been playing around with their stuff. And they have keyboards with keys this big and all kinds of really amazing things. And if I never have to use it, but at least I've seen it, I feel like that is more important because when someone comes to me and says, what are my options? I know what my options are. And in fact, I'm getting ready to ask Fred Rebin, who's the one who's in charge of that accessibility unit, to really give me a detailed set of all they have available to them over there, because we certainly don't have it at the law school. Not at all. Okay, so we'll move from Steve Guy to Scott Greenblatt. And Scott was one of my students that I helped. He was in many of our classes. My director had him in her cyber law class. And he has actually graduated. He is a practicing attorney. And he wrote me that one of the most frustrating things about his experience as a law student was getting his casebooks in the format that could be read by his JAWS reader. And that was the most, he said, there might be other more frustrating things or upsetting things to him, but he thinks he just blocked them out because that was like the most irritating thing to him. And in talking to Mary Rumsey at Minnesota, who I was actually talking about her with something else, she said that what she did for one of her students was she went to the authors because the vendors don't cooperate, or they haven't been cooperating, and hopefully that's changing. But she went to the vendors, she went to the authors, and they actually gave her documents that JAWS could read. And I just thought that's the kind of interesting solution that I would have never thought of. Nobody thought of it for Scott. And it had been a while, Mary said, that she had done this. So this was something that she just had this little nugget of information that just kind of came out in a conversation that had nothing to do with accessible technologies. And I really wish that I had known that, or somebody at FSU had known that, because frustration is one of the most debilitating things, especially when you've 3 years of adrenaline running through you from law school. You really want to make things as smooth as possible. But you can read more about Scott. He made it through, and so he's one of the people that I really started to see what a problem legal research was for people who were using accessible technology. We had to use Westlaw. Westlaw has a version of their search engine that is a stripped down version. It has maybe 4 or 5 different things, and it has a search box. Lexis, no. This is a couple of years ago. I went onto the Lexis site and it said, if you need help with accessibility, fill out this form and someone will get back to you. Still, to this day, don't they want the business? I don't understand why it is so difficult for them to strip down. They have an example in their competitor. And it seems like they just don't care. And I actually talked to our, in a separate division, our Lexis representative, and I've known him for some time, and I said, look, can you please get somebody to contact me? I filled out this form, no response. I want to know what's been going on. And so he sent out supposedly his emails, and he emailed me back. He said, did anybody get in touch with you? I was like, no. So that's the state of Lexis at this point. So maybe I'll have an update that somebody is managing to strip down a page of their search engine, or maybe they're just so busy doing who knows what that it's just not important. So I'm not the biggest Westlaw fan, but in this case, I have to say they have something that you can use as a practicing attorney, and Lexis just doesn't. So that's Scott. This is Jacob. Jacob is a partial quadriplegic, I think is what he said to me. He has very limited mobility in his hands. He's a law student at Jones Law School, which is where I used to work. And my co-presenter actually knows Jacob much better than I do. I talked to him on the phone, and we were actually comparing research issues that we had with taking classes, because I had been taking a class myself online. And he's actually in a milk bone commercial, and he has a wonderful these YouTube videos. One is about his, see, that's me. My mouse is backwards, so I'm going to see if I can play, if I have any sound.
My name is Jacob Jeter, and I live here in Montgomery, Alabama, and have been for about 6 years now. I'm in law school, have been for the past year, and ended up doing all right with grades, so they let me come back for another year. I like to play play video games. Anytime I can get out in the outdoors, go shooting or hunting or anything like that's always a lot of fun. Or I can go out and do something on the happy camper. Kids always kind of look up to their parents, but when your dad was a jet pilot, that really was a pretty neat experience.
You know, he had his little flight jacket with all, Dad's patches all over, just like, his little Top Gun flight jacket.
I wanted to be a pilot from day one starting out. Not just a pilot, but a military fighter pilot. That was always my dream.
This is what caught me as I was watching this prior to talking to you.
It was an accident. Things happened, but I feel like it wouldn't have happened to me unless I was strong enough to get through it, to do well with what I've been challenged with.
So if you get a chance, they're on YouTube. The links are up. It's a fantastic story, and it's one of our law students. And so when I was talking to Jacob, I really like this picture here. There's another one about his assistive, his canine companion, and he's wearing bunny ears here because Jake takes him to various outreach programs. So when we were talking, I said I noticed him strapping his he's obviously limited mobility in his hands. And I babysat for a young boy when I was 16 who had cerebral palsy, who reminds me very much of the lack of mobility, and we had a lot of challenges with him. And so when we were talking, I said, what did you do about books? What did you do? How did you get your books online, or did you have a reader? And he was like, nope, I have a great lap. I have a lap all the time. And he just kind of, tapes, he's a little old school, I think. He just tapes together, an eraser and just kind of moves them along. And I said, it's funny, I need more accessible technology for my hands than he does, which I found really shocking, which is part of the don't assume what people need. Because when we were talking to each other, he was like, yeah, no big deal. And I was thinking of the struggles that I went through. In fact, this was me when I had my carpal tunnel surgery on this hand. And this is actually my writing hand. This hand collapsed and went on fire for 4 months until I could see the orthopedic surgeon. And so now we're on this hand. But this hand at that time, and I wasn't, because this was my dominant hand, I had to do everything for about 6 to 7 months with my right hand, which gave me tendinitis. And that's why they're both strapped up, because I literally couldn't do anything. I had to support this, or the pain was excruciating. So I was like, I give up, is basically what I'm sitting there thinking to myself. But this was my nemesis. This is one of the last classes I took to get my Master's of Science in Management Information Systems. And this book, it costs $160, and I think it weighs 160 pounds. I literally couldn't pick this book up. I had to slice the pages out of this book and destroy a $160 textbook just to be able to finish my class, because I literally couldn't pick it up. Imagine 3 case books piling off each other. I don't know what they made this book out of. And it just cracked me up, because I heard I was a licensed California attorney, and here I was in a business program, and was struggling because I couldn't move the book around. And so you would think, here's Jacob, and he has massive physical issues, and he has no problem with his books and turning his pages. And I'm the one that can't manipulate my textbook, which I just thought was a really great lesson in never assume anything. So, moral of the story, don't assume, know. And if you don't know, ask someone who does. There's a lot of people out there who, will be happy to talk to you at length. In fact, Jacob was one of them. He was like, if anybody wants to know anything, I have an email. I have stories online. Please have them call me, talk to me. I'm happy to talk to anyone about it because everyone's story is different. So, this comes to my latest issue. I'm taking some online classes, and I've been doing that whole exercise where I'm inflaming my hand on purpose, which I think is my orthopedic surgeon trying to torture me, but we'll call it healing and go from there. And so I've been using the Dragon software, and it's excruciatingly long to do. I say something and it types something totally different, and I'm like, no, and I have to go back and then try again. So before it was due, I emailed the professor, and I said, you know, I have to transfer all this stuff over to the content management system that we use at FSU. I had everything done on my computer, and the lightning was shaking and thunder was shaking the building we were sitting in. There was wet spots all over the place. And so I said, you know, it was prior to it being due, I said, you know, I can't get plugged into electricity. People were, you know, the people at the station were like, ah! You know, and unplugging me as I was speaking. And I have my brace for my arm actually has a metal bar in it. And my brace on my leg is made of metal. So I'm basically a lightning rod. And so even for a normal person, you're not supposed to be talking on the phone or whatever. And so I said, you know, I'm going to get to it as soon as I can, but 5 o'clock it's not going to happen. We're in the middle of, you know, a maelstrom. And this is what the professor said back to me. Is that a true statement? That if you can send an email, you can upload multiple documents onto a content management system? Has anyone heard of smartphones with email on them? This is just, to me, it's just one of the final straws, to be frank. But to me, this represents a fundamental disconnect between what the faculty see as what people can do when they're in online education and what reality is. Because, I mean, this is like, why can't you electrocute yourself? I don't understand. I mean, that's the way this reads to me. And I'm a little hypersensitive because I've had multiple people in online education. I think that we use online education and we use talking online to say things to each other that we would never say to someone's face, ever. And there's a fundamental lack of awareness of people as humans, I think, on the other side of the internet or the other side of the email. And this just floored me. I was just floored. And I like how she calls my assistive braces heavy metal. That's kind of funny if I wasn't going to be possibly electrocuted by them. So I just think that there needs to be education not only of us, but of the faculty who are teaching online.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Did you subsequently discuss this assumption with the professor?
This just happened. This just
Like
happened.
this week?
Yeah, this just happened this week. This happened on the way to coming to this talk. So, yeah, I'm going to have a discussion because I think it's something that is running rampant. And there has to, I mean, this is somebody who knows that I'm registered with the Student Disability Center on campus, who knows that I just had surgery 3 weeks ago, that knows that I've got these weird exercises going on with my inflaming my nerves and all this other stuff, and it doesn't matter because I think I'm not real to her. what I mean? I'm a number and a face and an email. And I've never met this person, and they've never met me. And I've found, I had my MIS program was completely online, and there were some issues there because we all know how friendly business professors can be. So it wasn't until I got on the phone and I said, we need to talk, that we had a cordial conversation, because suddenly I was a person again. I wasn't just lines on a content management system. I wasn't just some random email. So we'll move on from this because it's just, yes.
Can you talk specifically about Dragon? Because I use it a lot, and my experience has been the early versions, I guess about 4 or 5 years ago, when I talked about this at AMS. I've got a Southern accent, and I think the original version of Dragon that was incomprehensible.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you.
But now
yeah.
The new version, I trained it at about a half an hour, and I've got a much higher recognition rate. And I was wondering what you saw as specific problems with Dragon.
I tend to find that when you're discussing certain very technical subjects, like I had a lot of trouble in my MIS classes with Dragon, because I was using jargon, and I mean it doesn't recognize my name. So I, spell it M-A-R-I. I mean, that takes time. It takes, a long time to do that. But you're right. We're on Dragon 10, and it actually does have different options for different speech patterns. But I have to tell you, I was born and raised in New York City, which no one can usually tell anymore. Actually, I was born in Brooklyn, so I've lost just about everything, living in California and living in Florida. But I think I tend to enunciate really clearly. And I'll say something, and I'll look at it, and it's nothing like what I said. And the thing is, I think that it's recognizing, it does the recognition of your documents as well that helps. By going through your computer and seeing how you write and seeing your emails, and I tend to change computers a lot. I have this new one that has nothing on it. And so when I install Dragon, there's nothing there for it to pull from. And so that's another issue, is that I have to go in and I have to install some documents that will allow it to kind of use that artificial intelligence to kind of say, okay, this is the way she talks, this is the way she writes. But the other problem is that this isn't a long-term thing for me. When this hand stops being on fire, I'm not anticipating needing it anymore. So Jake and I have this conversation. He uses it really successfully, but he's been using it for years. It knows him. He has so much backstory to the Dragon software that his success rate is much higher than mine would ever be. And I wish I had time to sit and talk.
On the subject of that, my understanding is that largely the research and development funding for Kurzweil and Dragon, whatever, bottomed out about a decade ago, and recognition patterns have been hanging around 80% since about 2001.
Okay.
I'm looking at statistics here from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, are reporting that it hasn't really improved at all since 2001.
Well, and that kind of makes sense to me. Maybe it's specific to the type of thing that you're trying to get it to recognize. I mean, I'm talking about emerging technologies that just happened last week, and it's not recognizing a lot of what I'm saying, and it's but on the other hand, that stuff didn't exist, and so the development side, I'd love to know more, because as much as it seems improved, and it seems that people who've been using it a long time have been really happy with all the new iterations, there still leaves a lot to be desired. And it's incumbent, I think, upon, they've kind of put it on the user to remedy that, to fix those things that maybe could be put in with development and more money. And instead, they've asked you just train and more, train and more, train and more. I don't have time to train. I don't have time to sit. I've read Alice in Wonderland to it like 1,000 times. I've read all kinds of interesting things. And I do think that maybe the document scanning is a big part of it that I'm missing, which is a frustration factor for me. But on the other hand, something is better than nothing. So I'm not down on Dragon at all. I'm just saying that it's frustrating. And that is part of one of the real issues, especially when you're combating not just that one thing, but a number of issues. So I'd love for you all, if you have any stories, to be in touch with Ryan Overdorf and I. We make up the committee of two. He's the committee chairman of the CSSIS Adaptive Technologies Committee, and we have a wiki, and he blogs, and I've actually been blogging myself, although I've gotten to the point where, like, I've been talking into my computer or into my smartphone about, this is what I meant to say, and this is what came out. And they're really funny. I just haven't gotten them up yet. But there's the Adaptive Technologies Committee wiki. And there's a lot of really good information. We're adding things all the time. And if you have anything to contribute, or if you feel that there's parts of it that we've put up that really need to be fleshed out, I mean, this is a new committee, please be a community and help us out, because we're only two people, and one of us is struggling. So there's also a CALI session website. After this is over, I'm going to be putting out the materials. My co-presenter, who's lugging around an IV, unfortunately, was nice enough to put together a bibliography, and then I'll post that there. And also, what I'm going to do is take some of the more technical things that I felt I really couldn't cover alone in this session, given our time constraints, and really talk about them, because there's the issue with the bar, there's the issue with Kindle, and with all kinds of really interesting things that I think deserve much more in-depth treatment than I could talk about here. So I'd like to post those for you. If anyone has any specific questions, I'm available on mdell@fsu.edu, and I'm a researching maven. I love to research, and researching adaptive technologies or researching issues about what's going on out there in the community is fascinating to me, and I'd be happy to take on any projects where you have a question and it needs to be answered and it should be posted. And I really want to start getting all those on the CSSIS Adaptive Technologies blog, which is available for anyone to read. And we'd love to have you contribute, like I said. So, like I said, thank you for listening, learning, understanding, beginning the journey to understanding. Please don't hesitate to be in touch with either Ryan or myself. I'll post this PowerPoint to the session. And if anyone has any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. Or yeah.
I wondered if you or anyone here has had any experience with any of the captioning software, just caption your own video. Has anyone used it?
There was a CALI, I think last year, somebody put together a program on captioning that was really good. That's something that I feel really strongly about, because I tend to put captioning on even though I don't need it. I just want to know what really got said. Some people will mumble. So, does anyone have any real-world experience?
Yeah, I've worked with, TechSmith's product, I forgot what they're called, but they're actually a screen desktop capturing program.
Oh, like, campaign?
Their captioning tool is amazing.
Okay.
And what's nice is that you can export it as an XML file, and that's pretty much open to as many other programs will import it. And I think YouTube is taking that now. I think you can caption YouTube videos.
I haven't looked into this, but I wonder if media notes can also be used for captioning, since it does have an annotation capability.
Yes. I'd like to put that on the blog if you don't mind.
Just a comment.
Okay, sounds good.
No copyright is asserted.
Last year, during the discussion we had about captioning, one of our colleagues actually mentioned that there is a way to do it with freeware online. And I'll see if I can dig up my notes on that and send them to you so that everybody can share that.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, there's so many products. That's the thing. Also, is we found there's a million different products, but which ones are the best and which ones are easily usable is a real factor. I use Camtasia a lot, and I never even bothered with the captioning, so that's very interesting. And so Media and the freeware. Thank you. Yes.
I'm wondering if anybody in the room was caught in the fallout from the American Disabilities for the Blind lawsuit over the admissions forms, and if you were, or even if you weren't, what you decided to do about it.
Yeah, that's something that I just read about, and I'm actually going. That's one of the things I'm planning on researching more. I think I have a little blurb about it, so I'll update on that as soon as I can and see what the latest is.
I found there was a nice little tool online that's a Section 508 compliance checker. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but I think it's www.section508.info, and they have a little tool there you can put in your web pages, just the URLs, and it'll run a compliance checker. It'll tell you what's wrong with them. And if there's nothing wrong with it, they award you a sticker that you can put on your page that says 508 compliant and has a little flag on it. But we went back in and completely redid our 8-page application form. And when I first looked at the one we had up there, I said, "Oh, this looks pretty good to me. I mean, everything's tagged and everything's, accessible to a blind person." The problem is it didn't read sequentially. So if you just took your form that you created, you took a shortcut, right? You created it in Word and then you turned it into a PDF, and then you went in and edited a few things, the reading order is completely messed up. So I decided to redesign ours with InDesign, which made it a little more kosher. But I was struck when I was trying to do this with how difficult it is for a sighted person to try to test something that you're building for a person who can't see. Because even though I would shut my eyes and try to navigate the form, I still knew where everything was. It was pretty hard to stop your hand from guessing where the
Yeah, muscle memory. Well, the latest that I had was just some things that were posted on the Law Librarian blog and the Chronicle about that. So this is one of the issues that I really wanted to update and see what the latest is. And I find it interesting that the 4 schools that are being sued are Thomas Jefferson, Chapman, University of California, Hastings, and Whittier. And I went to Cal Western, so the only thing I can think of is that they're still using paper. I mean, that's what the times they are. Or they'll probably be involved in this too. But there's all kinds of issues with, I was talking to Jake about, the bar exam. And he was like, you know what, I haven't even thought that far ahead. And he's in Alabama, which doesn't have a lot of resources, doesn't have a lot of, California, where I took the bar, was one of the first bars in the country to use bar software. And thank God too, because my handwriting goes bad after like 4 lines. I don't think I would have passed the bar if I had to write it all. And so these are issues from state to state that are really important. And I was also one of the things I wanted to investigate was, who's using what, who's allowing what for the bar exams, because I think that's really important. And like I said, something that somebody who's obviously going to need some help that hasn't even thought of. He's still trying to get through law school. Yeah.
I just want to say I hope that technology keeps making things more accessible. And sometimes, even though something's accessible, it's just not the same. Like years ago, before programs like ExamSoft, I know a student, for example, who had carpal tunnel, who couldn't write for long periods of time, but could type, was able to type it on a computer, and then what they did is they had a staff member at their law school write it out. I mean, here it is, this student did not feel equal, because they know that another human being had to, I hate to use the word suffer through,
right. Well, and at some level, there's the other people who are saying, wait a minute, this person probably types really fast, and when we took the bar, there was that feeling between the two different. They actually had us segregated between handwriters and typists, and there was this feeling between the two that the bar exam suddenly wasn't equal, because some people were typing, and I typed like the wind, and I barely finished. And there was a whole other group of people who came out, and they were like, "Oh my God, that performance test was so long, and I didn't get to finish it." And I'm thinking to myself, "Yeah, I know. I typed like 60 words a minute, and I barely finished it. How did you write that?" And so there was this inherent inequity, I think, because of that. And in a way, it seems like, if you can type more than you can write, and then somebody writes it out for you, the playing field seems level, but that person had an advantage because they were able to type. It's really interesting questions, and I love the way that that's an example of, using a creative solution to something that really didn't have a good solution at the time. And I think that we can't really lose sight of that. It's really important to keep on with that kind of thinking. Yeah.
I don't know if it varies from place to place, but there are some issues between privacy of the individual with a disability and the need for the people working with that person to be aware of the disability, and to some extent it gets down to the student has to inform the Center for Disabilities at the university, but basically what is told to the administrative staff and the tech people and the professors is zero.
Yeah.
You have such and such a person, and we're giving them these, extra time on the exam or whatever, but you don't know what the disability is, and until the person comes to you and, admits, oh, I'm the one with the disability, by the way, and that becomes an awkward thing for people to believe that that they're different because they have to go and ask for support.
It's almost like a branding.
Yeah.
That's what was my objection. It's like, on the one hand, if I don't do this, I have no protection. And obviously, it doesn't matter anyway, based on the email. But on the other hand, I don't want to be treated differently. I want to do everything I can to be on a level playing field with everyone else. And so, yeah, there is that kind of strangeness, stigma, and I think that the more that you can head that off at the pass by having all this by having knowledgeable people who can say, do you need this, do you need that, it helps a little, and there's always going to be a tension. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for all your comments and your questions. Please keep in touch.
Can I borrow your photos? Like Zen and my reset, but I'm trying to stay
Can't hurt. All Phil Ball, what's up?
Oh,
yeah.
So, back to the going back Paul?
Yeah. We extended this
Fall or spring?
3 to 4 years.
I learned that just yesterday.
He does not want to
Although others do. Like that.
He uses Titan Campus to record
Paul?
stuff with
Right. So we just deal with students with disabilities and
Fairly.
deal with like directly
He's a student.
for help with policy, prompts, or
The only thing he really gets from the professors is that
Pardon me, I completely missed the list.
prescribed for him to take all his assignments through either integrity or through speaking. And then obviously, our building is handicap friendly in the sense that, we don't have to have help getting in the elevators or everything. But we can get all over.
oh, okay.
So, instead of class,
That your iPad?
so, until, I think it's about 5 or 10 minutes after class, they actually close them, but every other door in the building, and the elevators all have handicap accessible buttons, and he uses his head.
Wi-Fi is really blinking. Is that the word?
Yeah.
Best hotels? Oh, I'm not at the hotel. Oh, that's right, you're at Thomas. Yeah, I was gonna say, you must have very good connection. The hotel is like, very slow and I guess I should in line with
I actually almost
I do. What did you like? Traditional lawyer answer, my new only basketball team. My next session is at 2.
Is this SharePoint?
Out here.
We all, like I said, we actually were going to put the handicap buttons on the bathroom.
They're to the either you
But it didn't work.
Let me sneak back by you again.
For his case,
all this vocabulary and all this particular dialects, which is all well and good.
going into
But it gets to a point where the dialects, language goals,
he has an age that comes.
it just gets these things. It just there comes a certain point. It's such a key. This guy, he has a photographic memory. Actually, he is like dialects and share that information.
85%
Updates or what have you.
And his class, like I said, he's on a 3-year, but it's unbelievable. And the thing is, I look up to him every season. When you talk to him, Patrick, I'm blessed. Even I'm not. Yeah.
Really? Commonwealth Hospital?
No.
Yeah.
We're still,
Yeah,
my president
Yeah.
Lincoln Avenue. So must have been nearby.
Park Slope, Bensonhurst.
I've only visited that area like twice in my life since I was an infant.
It was nice to see you again.
Good to see you there.
It's
Hi.
stigma if they tell
the
us.
CSSIS, you said you're on.
That's
there.
what
Yeah.
I think. The whole principle in our school is our whole mission statement.
You know, I didn't even know about
Oh,
it
I mean,
until
they can
I
go
was
to
on the
professors
education
and not
committee, because
feel
I
like
volunteer every year for
you're
something,
different.
and I've always been
I mean, we've got
happy.
people that
Or it's at the peers are going to play.
And,
It's like so
I there was an email sent out, and
yeah,
no
but I mean,
access to, I don't know.
they
But,
I don't know. I think it's just the culture of our school. We're borderline. I mean, it's from a Baptist college, so it's